let's see who got there. One, two of you, and two of you, Daniel and Jesus, came up with the other number, which is the 189, 814.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out why you got that.
Now, okay, it's close but no cigar.
Yeah.
And this is the real challenge here. And this is when we go into, oh my goodness, is this governed by the debt service coverage ratio or the loan to value?
LTV.
LTV.
Why?
Because we have an
So you got it wrong, and you said it's governed by the LTV. But why? And see, here's the issue. And you say, hey guys,
It's the lowest amount.
it's only $1,000.
It's the lowest amount of.
It's the lower of
It's
the
the lower
two.
amount.
But you put the higher amount. See, if you use the formula that says the lender is willing to lend a maximum of 75% loan to value, you actually have a higher number. But in fact, it's always the lower of the two numbers that governs it.
So you have to do the calculation.
You have to do both.
Both, and then figure out which one is lower.
That's
and then
right.
You go.
You have to
And
figure
so-
out your annual debt service through the debt coverage service ratio, and then
And
you need to
so-
figure out your LTV, but
Right.
you need to work that LTV
And so
into.
Daniel, you got the right answer, but it was with the
Yeah.
wrong one. And so many loan documents will say you can do either or. But, so this loan document said, I'll let you do a debt service coverage ratio of 135 and up to 75%. And I structured the problem deliberately to be close. And so the lender will say, and see here the problem was, in fact, the issue was if you did the 189, the loan would have been greater than the allowable loan on the deal. So let's figure this out. So how did you figure out the basis? What is the total value of this building?
1.935.
How did you figure that out?
It's the acquisition cost plus the investment that needs to be put into
That's
the
right.
budget.
Right. So that's basically those two numbers, 1,375 and 560. And so what's interesting is that you take that number, and so now if you had done the maximum 75% loan to value, which is on, that's 1.4 something million dollars, then that would have pushed you above what he would have permitted at 135% debt service coverage ratio.
Why do they call it a permanent loan?
Pardon?
Why do they call it a permanent loan?
All right, so a permanent loan is a loan that you place on a building once you've reached stabilized occupancy. Construction is completed. And so let's say you purchase a building, you engage in the construction, renovation, or you build it. So lenders will lend you a construction loan or an acquisition and development loan. And then once you've finished that work, and then you tenant or lease up the building, that's a different class of lender, they take a different level of risk, interest rates are different, they will then want to be taken out of the deal, and then a permanent lender comes in and says, I will place a loan based upon your fully leased building, and it will go for, here in this case, 10 years.
Okay, so it's sort of like a refinance.
Yeah, but
It's not actually a refinance, but basically it is taking out the A&D or the construction loan, acquisition and development. Or
So basically, you need to go with a bank, with one type of bank, to get the acquisition of the building
That's right.
and do whatever renovation you need, and then you go with another bank.
So what
sometimes the
usually,
same bank will let you roll it into a permanent loan.
so
with the
what
same
usually
bank.
happens is that you often will go to the permanent lender, and they will say, who is your A&D or construction lender? Or vice versa, you go to the A&D, the acquisition and development and construction, and let's say, who's going to take me out? Bring me the permanent lender as well.
I suppose that they call it permanent because the other one is of a short duration.
That's correct.
And usually, what's the duration?
It could be a couple of years or 18 to 24 months, depending
Okay.
on your
And then how big the
development
project
period.
is when you finish it.
That's right. And so, I mean, that's what this problem in a way is really all about. And so in this particular case, it's $256,000. Basically now we're taking this and we're saying what is 1.35? And so now we take the 256, 250, divide that by 1.35, and of course, we'll see that particular number was too high, so now we go back and we look around and we take that number and we work back and we see, I've got to use this number because otherwise the loan was too high. And so by doing this number, that was the only way you could get this number right, because you subtract the debt service from the NOI to get the net cash flow. And of course, those of you who got that number right. So, then to figure out the return on cost, gee, some of you got, let's see, 18%, 144%, not going to work. 3.47, 13.9. Now, one of you put, Daniel, you put 13.24, and sometimes that works because people are confused about what's the return on cost based upon. So is it actually put on the actual cost on the deal, or is it your investment? And we can have an argument about, is your return on cost based upon your net cash flows or the actual total cash flow in the deal? So I can give you a pass on that particular one. But in fact here, our return on cost really is based upon what the cash flow is on the total investment of the deal.
So
generally, that's the way we look at it.
67,251 divided by 1.9 million.
Yeah, that's right. And so if you look at this, and then of course the return on equity, the equity was only that 25%. Smaller amount, that's why the number's 4 times or greater than that.
That's not a very good deal.
Huh?
That's not a very good deal.
Well, go to
Well,
the next question.
Well, wait a second, that goes to the next question. What do you
It's
think?
very subjective.
Is it a good deal?
I put no.
Because
For
My
39
investor's hurdle rate is 15%. And
yours.
Yeah.
But wait, this is a Class A building, it's a great location.
You're gonna beat the 5-year S&P. Actually, you're right around there.
So, do you mind if I read your comment?
Sure. I mean, I don't mind. So.
Although my ROE is wrong,
Oh.
I am safe to assume that this is a desirable project to invest in. Why?
Oh! Because it was going to be larger. The ROE was going to be larger than the ROC.
But no, I didn't say, is it because the ROE, I just said, is it desirable? And so that's important because generally the return on cost and the return on investment will track each other. And for a Class A building, let me see what everybody else said. Well, you said nothing there, Noah. And then Luis, you said yes because the ROE is greater than the ROC. But wait a second, we're going to, wait, we're going to, so that gets to the next question. So the next question is, so is the ROE always greater than the ROC?
Yeah,
Why?
it is. Well, I said no. I wrote ROC.
Well, the return.
But wait, I'm jumping the gun here. But usually,
I said ROE.
Usually it is, but not always, because technically you could have all cash and it could be 0.
yes,
right?
that's right.
So that's why I put usually and not always yes, but it should be.
But generally it is because the denominator is smaller. And so the key here is that for a Class A building, the returns are really not quite there. And so I would say, maybe if you're in a low cap rate environment and if it's in a great position and the investors say, competitively speaking, this is a very desirable asset. So there's no definitive answer, but I just wanted to see how you thought. And Daniel just said no, and it kind of went up this way, and I'm not trying to put anybody in the spot, but you know, there are different ways to look at it. I just wanted to see how you thought.
Well, the thing
No,
is
really,
that
I'm not putting anybody in the
believe-
spot. And,
I believe
wait, what did Noah say? Well,
I
Noah
said
didn't even
nothing.
answer it, so you just did a big yes.
Didn't even answer it?
You see, I wanted to see how you think.
My
See,
numbers
it's-
were coming in all jacked up.
It doesn't matter what your numbers are, I wanted to see how you think.
I got
Because ultimately, it's a combination of your thinking and your ability to crunch the numbers. Okay, and so here we get to this. All right, equity almost always seeks higher return than debt. Your risk capital is at stake, and of course, ROE is smaller. So generally, it is the right answer here. Okay. All right, so the next one, this should have been easy. Everybody gets the right answer. Unless you don't answer the question. All right, 5 out of 6 is a pretty good percentage.
Another baby man, good eggs.
Yeah.
Here comes some slack.
Yeah, okay. All right, come on, you know, that was
First time
pretty
in
easy.
history,
Just divide it, right?
And
All right, okay. So now this last question, this really goes to that whole issue of the IRR NPV that we were talking about 2 weeks ago, right? And so, you know, in a way, I call this a toss-up, but the truth is, if your hurdle rate equals the IRR, sure, most people will say go.
I put could go either way.
Yeah, yeah,
consider a hurdle rate.
That's
Yeah,
right.
me too.
Essentially, that's correct. And I put it this way. But remember this whole discussion, because IRR and equals, when it equals NPV, it means that it's 0. And so obviously, if you're lower than your required rate of return, it means it's negative, you stay away. And if it's higher, you go. So most of you got it.
So if
And
the
that's what
IRR is
How many questions are
equal
on
to the required rate of return, it doesn't matter if the NPV is positive or negative
Well, so-
or 0?
So, in fact, IRR at your required rate of return means NPV is 0. It doesn't mean that the value of the project is 0.
Right.
It means that it equals the rate of return that you saw.
Got it.
And many people will say, I'm kind of on the edge there.
Okay.
But for most investors will say, good, go. For me, I just say, well, you have to understand the qualitative aspects of the deal. And you always have to understand the qualitative
And
aspects.
sometimes to review a deal further in terms of if there are any mistakes in the deal, it could be like off by percentage points, something like that.
But you're gonna do that anyways in every deal, right? And in fact, you know, if this is negative, you'd say, wait, you do a sensitivity analysis. So bam, obviously if this is negative, I'm just trying to get your attention,
Yeah.
but then you say, what are the inputs? What are the factors that might change just this that will turn it positive? Or what is the sensitivity analysis that might turn that negative? And that's why when you look at the information and the sensitivity and the assumptions, you have to understand what is it that might turn any of these deals positive or negative. Okay, so. All right, happy that we went through that, and oh my God, you realize how long that took.
So it's around like a 60.
All right, so let's go through a few other things. All right, he'll come back shortly, but I'm going to start anyways. 2 of you going, gee, do I need to know that kind of like after tea or something? What's going on?
Like warm water and sleep.
Well, for me,
That
it's
was-
like
that was
just
the
driving
big
a
one.
long distance or something, I don't know. Okay.
We'll do the check.
Actually, I want to do a brief review of the news. Are you disappearing on me too?
No, I'm just cleaning up my mess.
All right. Employment, actually, I'm going to go to employment and sort of thing and that. But here are the articles. I want to make sure you understand numbers. This is really, really important. So, of course, you probably read all these articles in the last 2 weeks, right?
Of course.
You were sitting there at home with the storm. Actually, up in Palm Beach County, thank goodness, now we all know what a wobble is.
Yeah.
Right? Because the storm actually went about 20, even though it generally followed that path, actually
Wobble.
depends which way you were, but it moved about 20 to 30 miles further to the east as it traversed by Palm Beach County. So in Palm Beach Gardens, our top wind was 68 miles per hour, not the 90 to 100 that might have been. And so, yeah, and so our association, I'm the treasurer of it, we just had to pay out about $1,500 to fix up landscape damage instead of thousands of dollars that might have been for other things. And so, but these articles I thought were really interesting for a couple of reasons. And so, did you look at this article? This was in the Wall Street Journal just this past week about big cities seeing rents cooling off. And somehow they say rents falling. But this was the chart that I thought was interesting. Anybody remember this chart? Let's look at this chart really closely. This is important because it helps you understand what's going on. All right, so San Francisco, San Jose, New York, and the U.S. And then they have home prices. This is an article about rents. Rents have skyrocketed in a lot of cities. In fact, it's gone up nationally. And so look at this. This is the percentage change in rents over years. All right, look at this chart. What does the chart tell us? Even if you haven't read the article, which I hope you have, what does it tell us?
Where the business cycle
All right, yes. And so in this particular part, it's basically saying that rents were declining here and then they went up. But so many people, when they look at this chart, the first thing I'm going to ask you is, why?
Foreclosures.
No, nothing about foreclosures.
Home prices are steady.
Pardon?
What were you gonna ask?
I'm going to say it has 3 cities up there in the U.S. average. Tell me, does it make sense to have U.S. home prices on here?
I thought you were gonna ask why it spiked.
Well, I'll get to that.
It doesn't make sense because you're just looking at these 3 pretty big markets and you're mixing in the whole.
But wait a second,
US
we've
home
got the
prices.
United States here. The first thing I want you to understand is even the Wall Street Journal, they think they're so
is.
smart.
You're looking at the 3 hottest real estate markets comparing to the U.S. home prices, which is on the average. So
Alright,
in that
so-
sense, you have a highly inflated income to like land value.
Okay, maybe, but maybe not. This is about rents. So why in God's name are we looking at home prices? There may be correlation, but there sure as heck isn't necessarily causation. So that's the first flaw in this chart. I mean, home prices? We know there's an issue, but it's home prices. If this has been rental, but oh wait, this is residential rents. Home prices, by the way, for the last 50 years have essentially been in real terms flat. So that's not a good measure. All right, now, you pointed out here, yes, now look at this chart. Tell me, what does this tell you about whether home prices have actually fallen? Have home prices fallen?
No.
Yes.
Well, I guess it depends
It's
market specific.
No, okay. Yes,
Look-
they have fallen.
They have?
Well, okay, maybe, no, I'm sorry, I'm looking at it in terms of the income group, sorry.
Yeah. And by the way, I showed this to my University of Miami class, actually this Thursday, and they all went like, oh, this is a chart of the change in rents. If you actually looked at the chart of what rents were, this is just the quarterly change. So, like the change in 2010, they were still going down. Rents went down 5%. All right, in 2011, let's look at the San Francisco. They were up about 1%. And I guess in 2012, they went up almost 15%. In 2013, rents went up 7%. They didn't go down, they just went up at a lower rate. See, that's deceptive. In 2014, they went up about 5%. In 2015, they went up 10%. And here finally, okay, they may have dropped, but the actual price is still far higher than it was here. And if you look at the price of these rents, of these apartment homes, they probably are all like this. This is not a chart of rental prices. And most people miss that completely. And so, wait, some big cities see apartment rents fall for the first time in years. Yes, so rents may have fallen a little bit here, but overall rents are way higher than they were 6 years ago. Most people miss this completely.
Good thing this
Do you understand that?
Sharp.
Yeah, and so that's the important factor here. Come on, really. And so this is not meaningful yet. Only if this trend continues is it meaningful. Because remember, it's not about the statistic once, it's about the continuing trend. And then there was this article. All right, billionaire investor buying homes because people cannot afford. And here's the chart here. Look at this. What does this chart tell you? home ownership. All right, home ownership,
It's down.
is it?
It's about where we were.
It's down
Well,
from,
it's down,
from its
it's
highest.
down from its highest point.
You're looking at a pretty large sample size there, you're going back to 1965. So,
That's-
relatively speaking, in the
No,
2000s?
I
it's pretty
think,
high.
no, I think that it was because of politicians trying to make sure that, listen, politicians trying to make sure that everyone had a house, and the American dream is you gotta have a house with a picket fence, that they pushed and pushed and pushed financial institutions and all that to loan and loan and loan.
Financial institutions, I don't know if it was just the politicians, but it was the release
Well,
of the
they're doing it
Glass-Steagall
right
Act,
now.
it was the Clinton era policies, and everything else like that.
Mhm.
So it's everything, the financial system that created the bubble here. But you're right, but look at this. So we're actually now back to what
No,
has
but not
been
just
an
the boat, what I mean is
historical
that we
average.
needed renters. Well, you need renters, not everyone.
We don't
supposed
need
to.
renters, but historically, it's been in the 62 to 64% range. But yes, and what this doesn't show, if you go all the way back, it's been about here. And this was the bubble. But the reason why this is a bet is because, now here's where I'm gonna give you a little bit of logic here, which is kind of interesting. And I'm gonna point to my dad. So my dad bought his house in Pittsburgh in 1964. He bought his house for $53,000. That was a lot of money back then. All right, now house prices in real terms have stayed essentially flat, 1 or 2%, if you look at Case-Shiller indices. All right, so 1964, it was actually a big Tudor home in Pittsburgh, and my brother, sister, and I finally got my dad convinced to sell his house, you know, at 89 years old in 2014. The house is worth now about $870,000. So it's gone up, I guess, 12 times. Why the bet? So what would my dad's salary have been as a doctor back then? We're going to guess, making up the number, about $50,000. So his income was equivalent to the price of the house. Now, nowadays, by the way, most people say, oh, gee, if your income is like 1 to 4 from the ratio of your house price, that's been an historic average. My dad made far more than he needed to support the house price, which, oh, by the way, the mortgage rates back then were 4%. Oh, mortgage rates are about 3.5 or 4% now. So the house is $870,000 now. By the way, that's in Pittsburgh. If it was in Miami or whatever, maybe there'd be a 1 or 2 in front of it. And how much do you think the people who purchased the house are making? But these people probably $250,000. So your income has gone up maybe 5 times. The house price has gone up 12 times. This is why affordability has precipitously dropped, even though the statistics look identical on either end of the spectrum.
One of the pages that we left out of the 71 that we sent you was actually the affordability index from the National Multifamily Housing Council.
Okay.
And they talked about the amount of families that are spending 30% and the amount spending 50% of their income. And then they had an AMI indicator, and there was a whole bunch of data sets, but I didn't want to get into that because it deviated from
But
the actual
this is
project.
really interesting. And so what we have is in the US now is a double bell curve, where now the double bell is a larger bell of families that are in the lower end of the spectrum and, you know, true incomes trying to make ends meet, and maybe that's 10 or 20% of the wealth. And we have a bell here at the upper end, which is very affluent and has 60–70%. The middle is hollowed out. And so when you look at the skyline of Miami or any of these cities, it looks like, hey, you can buy and sell these places because the wealth and affluence is there. What are you looking at, Dan? I hope it's more interesting than what I'm doing. No? No, I didn't think so. That's right. So if you're looking at this, the reason why I'm telling you, showing these statistics is you can, when you look at these charts, you can figure out why they're doing what they're doing when someone wants to place a bet on single-family homes to rent. You can read the same numbers that I'm reading. I'm just trying to help you
Hold
read
on.
this.
So the bet is on
He's buying homes to rent.
who's that, Warren Buffett?
Huh?
Is that Warren Buffett?
It was another one of those investments. I'll pass by this one, it was this, and I wanted to just send you this last one. Remember 2 weeks ago, we talked about putting the chip into the body? So that's already old news. This is the latest article. Actually, they've now figured out that we can use our own electrical impulses. Why even bother with the chip? Because we have enough electrical impulses, so now we can just send a signal from our
I was
iPhone.
gonna tell you something, I realize I can't.
Oh,
It's an investment I'm making, and,
Okay.
it's very technologically based, but a similar.
Just out of curiosity, with this technology, how would they impact those individuals with the defibrillator? What do you call that? The Dick Cheney has in his heart.
yeah, a defibrillator, or people.
Just get electrocuted.
It's a problem for people who have electronic parts, isn't it? So much for the $6 million man or woman or bionic.
The guys involved,
You know.
the guy that did it is in jail right now. That,
Alright, so I'm gonna continue on my math and real estate lesson. Does this look familiar?
Donald.
It's Donald's income tax return from 1995. Here, I'll
This is
blow it up.
the New York Times, or,
Yeah.
have you seen the hats? No.
But the issue isn't whether he's a genius, actually. It was his
He's
tax
tax
accountant,
man.
Jack Mitnick, who lives in Boynton or Delray, who was a
Right.
smart guy, not Donald. Okay? But these numbers are important because you can do the math. You're smarter than Trump in this regard. His income, 6,000 from wages, who knows what that was. But look at this. There are two or three numbers here which are key. And it's all about the real estate stuff, okay?
Okay.
7.3 million is the taxable
Taxable.
interest income from 1995, and 3.4 million was the business income, okay? Now we know about the net operating losses. This is, yes, he may have gone according to code, but he basically pocketed the losses from the loans of the banks that did not use the debt losses, if you will. So the $1 billion that he basically borrowed on the bankruptcies for those casinos and the airline and everything like that, he took the benefit of those losses. That is unethical. It may have been legal, and he sheltered that. And of course, basically, we all paid for his sheltering of his taxes for the last 20 years. But the reason why this is interesting is that you can go back, and I went through historical interest rates. And so,
Why is it, I don't understand, why is it that it's unethical?
so I will tell you that while it may be legal, it's not right to take that particular position in the taxes. By the way, you can't have a fiduciary responsibility to yourself. That's illogical. You do what you can for yourself, but he had no fiduciary responsibility for himself because he had no other investors. He was just simply working for himself. Okay. And so the thing is that he lost $1 billion.
Right.
And then what he did was, because of a quirk in the laws, he could actually pocket the loss, even though the loss was the bank's loss. This is why the laws should be changed. Now, if Donald Trump, I'm not making a political statement, actually said, I know the tax laws and I will now change them because no one should be able to do that, that would be one thing. But he's not actually advocating that.
So he didn't actually lose like $1 billion from his own bank? It was money
It
that
was
he had
money.
borrowed that he never actually.
Borrowed. That's right, he never actually lost it. The
But he
bank
gets to
lost
write it off, so now he doesn't have, that loss carries through each year and he gets to.
That's right, and he,
Okay, so that would be like saying,
And it
for
offsets the
example,
taxes.
say I lost an apartment, a short sale, whatever, $250,000. Now I say that $250,000 is my loss. Is that the
yes.
same thing?
No, it is not, because what happens is for an individual investor, basically, it was your money invested. But on these large deals, he in fact was able to take the loss that was the bank's loss on the debt, not his own money invested. So for example, and because of the recession and other things, I and my partners, we've lost money in some deals, so the money that I invested in a deal, I was able to carry forward as a net
Because that's the
operating
money I-
loss.
right.
But it was the money I actually invested,
It's
not
money
the
from
money
your
that
bank,
was
it's money from your
invested or
website.
used by another
So it would be
institution.
like, for example, Ben invested as a bank with you, and then he lost also money.
I lost my money because of your failed investment,
That's
but now
right.
you're writing it off.
That's
You're
right.
right,
It's my loss.
like it was his.
That's
I'm the
right.
one that lost the money.
And so that should be changed in the law. And even though it favors real estate investors, it's not right and fair. And
But,
How's
but
that- how is
if he
that
gets
there?
to use it, you can't fault him for using
no,
it.
no, you
Right.
can't fault him for using it, but it's an example of the inequitableness of the law. So anyway, so look, in 1995, interest rates were 5%. So you can easily see that if you take that $7.3 million in interest income and you work back, you can use your calculator, that $7.3 million in interest income at 5% is worth about $150 million in enterprise value. There ain't no $1 billion there. Even Forbes said, oh, where's the $1 billion? Okay? And then, if
That was
you,
in 95.
yeah, 95, even then it's rated. And then, now if you look at his $3.4 million in business income, and so I went then to the S&P price earnings ratio, because I'm trying to look at some validation of his index. And so back then, in 1995, price earnings ratio was about 14.8 or 15. And so, you know, price earnings ratios, for those of you who aren't familiar, basically are an inverse of the return that goes to a particular stock. So if you have a price earnings ratio, for example, of 25, which is like right now, that implies a return on shares or an equivalent value of 4% on your investment in stock. So if you have a price earnings ratio of 14 or 15, it means about 7%. So if he had interest or investment income of 3.4 million, that's worth another 50 million. So maybe his enterprises had value of 200 million, give or take. Yes, there's some other real estate incomes that were shielded and separated, but there's no way you can find the $1 billion.
So how, okay, so where were the banks giving $1 billion that he could take? I mean,
You know, there's a fool and a huckster going every minute. They were based upon a promotion, a promise, a marketing, and a pitch that was simply not sustainable. Let's put it that way. Look, in hindsight, we can all be smart. That's right. And I can't fault them that, but the way it was built.
no, I'm just trying to think, what did they put the $1 billion? If you're saying that the enterprise was
Yes.
about 150 to 200, where does the $1 billion come from? I mean, where are the banks putting $1 billion into?
They put it into all the casinos in Atlantic City, into the airline that used to be the Eastern Airlines shuttle, into the Plaza Hotel, into all sorts of enterprises that failed and were poorly managed, poorly run, and never succeeded. And if you realize that, it turns out that Fred Trump, and we'll get off Trump in just a minute, his dad actually funded him to the order of about $60 to $70 million.
That was like 110 at least.
Yeah, this is separate. In fact, Mr. Trump is not self-made, all right? And when he says that we should be all on our own bootstraps, Daddy funded him for many, many years. And in fact, illegally so, when he pushed $3 million of chips to the casino and just left them on the table, which was against New Jersey gaming rules, if you will. And then, you know, enterprise value kept on pushing that. If you'd just simply taken the $200 million, which was the value of Trump real estate back in the late 80s and early 90s, and just let it grow, put it in an investment fund or a hedge fund, it would have been worth far more. It just shows that they didn't manage that right. All right, so let's talk briefly about construction contracts. I guess we can have Ben talk about this. You're like in this business or something?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, fine. And you know, this, I'm sorry, I went too quickly, but I wanted to talk about, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, but and I'm gonna do for the next 15 minutes. There are three primary kinds of contracts that everybody should be alert and aware to. Lump sum contracts, cost of work plus fee, and guaranteed maximum price. Which one do you think is my favorite?
Guaranteed maximum price.
You like the GMP?
I think GMP is, I have another word for it, GIMP. Doesn't,
So you like the lump sum?
Actually, I think that often cost of work can, plus fee is usually the best one, but it depends on the nature of the contract and actually the method by which you execute those contracts.
But, okay, but, can you go through the?
But,
That there's a,
but why, you know, the guaranteed maximum price is open book anyways, because you probably got some shared savings in there or something. Why wouldn't you wanna lock them into a guaranteed maximum price? Don't you feel like with the cost of the work, you're kind of leaving yourself exposed to?
so the reason why I put these three up here is that these are the three primary types of contract, and they all have a valid purpose in place depending on the type of real estate and the type of contract and performance that is engaged, and that's the point that I want to bring to you this morning. And so if you looked at the book, of course, lump sum contracts usually are for simple, easy buildings, like the Butler buildings that you see, the tilt-up buildings. I don't know if they were doing it
Rehabs.
over Sunwest, yes?
What about like
Rehabs.
fabricated buildings?
Yes, prefabs, that's correct.
When you say small buildings,
Cost work from
how
the
much money
person.
are you talking about?
A lump sum can be a very small or a great amount of money. It's about the undifferentiated. It's about buildings that do not have complicated systems, ones that are are simpler. I won't say simple, but are simpler
The ones
and
with
more
like
straightforward.
shallow foundations, like simple?
It doesn't matter what the foundations are.
No, that's right. No, it's not about foundation.
No, it's just about what
Because if
defines
you
scope
account
and
for
documents.
filing, yeah, that's
So,
a lot of money.
for example, a lump sum could be for a simple house,
Okay.
if you will. A lump sum can be for those, storage plus buildings that you see that are built by P&S Storage, if you will. So the reason why we talk about lump sum is usually an industrial kind of building that is put up that may often not even have air conditioning, may not even have any kind of systems, but it's really all about structure and just shelter.
It doesn't matter the type of building, but it's about the scope and the definition of the plan. If you have a good set of plans and a good defined, then you're willing to take a lump sum because it's all there. And you say, I
Yeah.
own this.
That's right. It's very simple. And that differentiates itself from guaranteed maximums. Often a GMP is used when, and we're not talking about how you execute, but a GMP is often used for very large, extensive, and expensive projects. So one might imagine that the Suncoast Stadium at about $500 million, or Hard Rock, or whatever they're calling it now,
Hard Rock.
probably had a GMP. I'm going to call it a modified GMP, but we don't know actually what kind of contract was in, they were working it was in. But that is because it's so large, so sophisticated, and because of the huge risk to Related and the others there, they said, all I want to know is that we're going to get delivered on time, on budget, in a particular way. And so this is really the kind of deal that goes to huge infrastructure projects. Most government-run projects, for example, run on that kind of deal.
And that's the one that you like? No, that's not the one you like.
Well, it depends, and I'm going to tell you why I have a preference, and yes.
Is it another name for like cost plus?
So cost plus is for something that is, for example, what I call for where you can't define often the scope. It's for a luxury home. It's for something where you don't
Renovation.
have
Good
good
renovations, rehabs.
For what?
Rehabs?
He was asking about for rehab, and if the
Yes.
scope is unclear, you would do a cost,
That's correct.
costless fee.
But so the risk is outstanding. It's not determined, but you basically say, I don't have a good handle on it, but it's the only way that you can manage the uncertainty in the deal. And that's often what happens when you have a rehab, a reposition, or redevelopment of a building. So in general terms, the only reason why I put this up here is to say, simple, straightforward, this is what you do, lump sum. Sophisticated, challenging, complex, a GMP. And then for uncertainty, luxury, or all those very, messy projects in between, cost plus. But the key to all of this is that, and this is a chart that I like, is that the cost of doing anything goes up the longer it takes to get something done. And it's basically what I call this cost impact curve, if you will. I'm sure Ed knows about this very well. Yes?
Is there like a consultant that can help you choose a good construction contract for your
Yes.
projects?
Yes.
What's the name of that consultant?
Well, there are a couple of different kinds of consultants in a couple of different ways. And so contracts can be delivered differently. And so I want everybody to know, and I know I'm kind of crunching because we didn't have 2 weeks to do the lectures here, but how you deliver the deal is different than how you actually did the contract. And so I have a preference to something called bridging. I don't know if you've ever heard this. It's a hybrid approach to managing contracts. So you can actually write a contract in one way, but you can execute and deliver, whether you have a construction manager, whether you have a design build consultant, in different ways to deliver the right kind of result. So don't confuse contracts with execution and delivery. So I realize I'm only giving you superficial. This is not a contracts course. This is not a construction course, but I want you to at least be familiar with the concept. And so what I wanted to give to you in the next 10 minutes, and then we'll talk about some of it at the end there, is that for most deals, the traditional method of delivery has been design the deal, bid it out, and build it. And that's what this basically is. So you're the owner, you go to your architect and engineer, they go through the schematic design, they do the design development, they do the construction drawings, and then they award the contract and you build it. It's logical, it's orderly, it takes 2 GD long. And the problem is that no way does an architect and engineer understand the complexity and the sophistication that's required for most buildings nowadays.
There's a disconnect, so if you don't have them engaged, they'll design it one way, not taking it into account the input of actually building it, or.
And then change order, change order, change
Well,
order.
no, but then,
No,
like you
that's
said, it
different.
takes a long time, you gotta design it, you have no like building input, so now you're putting it out to 3 different people, and you're like, man, why did they do it this way, why not do this, or let's do that, and then you can.
So if this was a simple deal, if it was for a industrial building, if you will, you're welcome to give the
No,
apology.
no,
if you like.
you look.
That's right. And so if it basically is for that lump sum contract, we say, I just need to get that building put up at Sun West Center. It's pretty simple. It's 50,000 square feet. We understand it's tilt-up panel. I'm going to design it. I've got that there. It's basically a shell. I'm delivering the spaces, which are clean and clear. Probably you can do this. And the architect or engineer who designs it is well versed in the technology of getting that done. And it probably will work. But there are disadvantages the more complex and sophisticated the building is. And so that's why this kind of delivery method does not work for most projects nowadays, given what needs to be done. So when people realized that it didn't work, they invented a different kind of method called design build. And they thought, okay, let's see if we can manage this a little bit more so. So we realized the architects and engineers, by the way, I'm a licensed architect, I understand this, but you know what, the architects don't understand it, so let's bring in that design build contractor, and he's going to put the architect underneath him. Okay, so if we bring him, generally it's a guy, know any gals in your business? Very few.
Huh?
There are a few?
A few what?
A few gals?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there are a
A
few.
couple.
But if we bring them in, if we bring the design build contractor in, so I'm referring to the male, but it's okay, it's anybody, then maybe we can manage that process better. And it has worked to a certain extent. However, there's a huge conflict of interest here. Who's getting what build? And in fact, so,
Should be the opposite.
pardon?
It should be the opposite. The architect should be oversee well. In this case.
No. See,
No,
in the
that's what we're
first
having
one,
for.
the architect was the lead, but the architect is, frankly, not qualified to take it through and successfully do it. And that's my bias here, and I think it's correct.
Yeah, but-
Understanding having done that. in a
Yeah, but
number of projects.
they inspect the
construction, right, the architects?
They're still gonna inspect the construction.
And they will,
Yeah.
that's right, but in
But
by and large.
but you're managing the whole process, the design development, so you're helping them develop their drawings.
That's right.
To build it.
So given the shortcomings, we flipped that process. So this design-build process was created about 40 to 50 years ago. But the challenge here is that now you've got the design builder and he's got a conflict of interest because his incentive is to get the deal done, and it's not necessarily going to be fully to the owner's benefit, if I may say so. Okay? And so he may pull in the GMP here, but it's not completed yet. And so it's hard to enforce something if you don't know what you've done yet or completed it. And so from our perspective, certainly from my company, Brookwood Group, we see this as a flawed arrangement. Once again, it can work. It depends always on the people who are doing the deal. So another kind of methodology, a delivery method was invented called construction manager, if you will, a CM or contractor at risk. And so they said, all right, so the design builder, too complicated or too much contract or conflict, if you will. So let's bring in the CM at risk. So he's at risk for the delivery and the production. But the problem is, once again, he's still caught up in the middle of that entire design development phase. And he doesn't have the ability to deliver everything in traditional way.
Okay, why is he at
Successful.
risk? Why is he at risk?
So basically, what we're saying here is that we're loading this contractor with all of the risk. And so therefore, if we're loading him with the risk there as a traditional contractor, but then he's going to point fingers and he says, but wait a second, but the architect and engineer, though, is no longer under his purview.
Okay.
So we...
That doesn't work. That doesn't work either.
Yeah, so there are ways to skin a cat, there are different methodologies. So our firm actually, this is about 30 or 40 years ago, invented this method. There are others who call it differently. We call it a bridging method, where in fact, we basically say, we bring in a design consultant, call it an architect, call it whoever you want, up front, who basically does what we'll call schematics and bridging contract documents, and then we pass that off to the design-build contractor. Because your architect, your designer, does not know how to build the building. They only know enough to give you a good design. And then, if you can pass it off to the design-build contractor who can do the CDs, now you have properly assigned the risk to the deal.
So basically, the owner's design consultant just basically gives you a concept.
Yes, that's right. And so now you've shifted risk properly, but you still have somebody up front who manages and controls and still performs the traditional, if you will, supervision role for the owner's benefit, and then you've created this design-build contractor who has his own architects and engineers to properly spec out and actually put the actual construction documents together.
That's just a design build with an advisor that's an architect.
That's right. And so, and you're right, and in others, it's another design build, but we call it, we in effect bridge the process to get rid of the inherent conflict of interest so that this individual doesn't actually, so now that you have this designer here, these people actually are being watched or checked, if you will. And so this way you have something.
So there are two sets of let's say if your owner's design consultant is an architect, you will have an architect there, and you will also have then an architect under the design field that is actually doing.
But there's only really one architect, and it's the guy that draws the drawing and stamps them.
These
The other
are the
guy's just kind of giving them direction.
That's right. These are the architects of record, but you've at least gotten a good initial spec that qualifies for the need and the responsibilities that you have for your
So
project.
you have to pay him less than 4 to 5%.
Well, yes. So the key is here, is the savings in your geo worth the effort in what's going on? And we've found that the time and the effort and the change order that take place are far less, and as a result, you manage your design, you manage your control,
Is the 4
and
to
it beats the
5%
cost.
after he's paid, or that's?
No, he's just saying in general, overall, because of change orders, because of time, because
That's
of
right.
this. It's not, you're saying 4% off of a fee off of a guy or something.
That's right. So once again, the whole issue here is that if you can manage your timeline, then you in fact have managed yourself successfully. So we're right at 10:30. I have BIM and other issues to get us to the end there. Hopefully Fred will come down. And so we have Susan Berkman here, who's going to be one of our jurists for our presentations. Our timing is 10:30. Why? You have us booked here.
No, that's fine.
Great. So, all right, so this is a good stopping point for now. Where's your PowerPoint presentation? You can put it on a computer, or?
We don't have a PowerPoint presentation.
You don't?
No,
And
Who
do
wants to
you?
go first? Yes.
No, I
Yes.
want you to go second. Call Carlicia and see if you can wrap her in some way, shape, or form. That would be good.
I mean, we can go first, that's fine.
I want them to go first.
Throw it out.
Take a quick break if you want right now, actually, that would be good.
Yeah, I'll do it.
That's good.
Yes, what's up? Wonderful. How exciting. Oh, so that's why you're off by about like, $300. I hear you, okay. I hear, that's your copy, don't worry.
Yeah, I know.
I hear
There's
you.
two people like me.
And then you start with me, of course, on Tuesday night,
Yeah.
because you're in development too.
Yeah. And I don't know if I'm gonna come the first day of class. I don't know. I'm gonna do my best. Because if the baby goes to the she's not thinking, now we're counting the constructions. I
Yes.
just think that maybe tonight.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Are you gonna induce labor then, or?
No.
No.
Yes, but not.
Okay.
She's speaking with that.
Is this your first, or
My second.
your second?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's it. The toughest issue is that my second child is 4 years old and we're alone here in the States. So she's taking care of the baby
All right.
and she's now not feeling
Okay, well, I wish you well.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so, okay.
All right. That's good.
And, well, no, that's all.
I hear you. Okay, that's good, thank you.
How are you?
How are you, Susan?
I'm great, thanks.
So this is my grid for
Okay.
today.
So there's two groups?
There are two groups.
Okay.
And one of the group members lives in Tampa, and they were up till midnight last night, and she elected not to drive because she felt she would be too tired and would be putting her personal safety at risk. So she wrote me at 7 o'clock this morning. And so they will figure out whether or not they will,
How they will?
how they're going to present with her. Because as he just said, they don't have a PowerPoint they're going to present. I have no idea. So that's why I want them to go first, so we can have the better presentation. Maybe second. This may be very short.
Okay. Okay. Well, you know, go work in my office over anyway, because all I have is meetings and I never get my work done.
What's going on? The big
This
thing
is the open house today.
For the university?
I think for the university.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I know that they had asked some reference people to like have a desk or something.
Oh, okay,
So-
great.
Yeah, so I was like, what's with the garage? What's
No,
It's
it's,
like,
it's, you know,
yeah,
everybody
great.
looks excited and happy.
Yeah.
All these wonderful things going on. So,
Yeah,
so that's
that's
really
cool.
good. That's good. Okay. Good. Alrighty. I guess we're gonna do the screen for now. upstairs to see him, gonna text him, unless that's him up there.
You know why it's always so cold in here?
Yes, because we want to stay awake.
I thought it was actually the opposite, that being cold actually makes you less able to
Really?
focus.
So actually,
No.
I don't think it's cold. I
I'm
think it's-
comfortable.
I'm comfortable because, of course, I'm the one up here doing all the
Exuding all
work
the
and
energy.
full of energy and trying to keep you gentlemen engaged. So next time, bring a sweater.
I
or-
like coming to the
Wait,
business
this
school.
is
It's
your last
cooler.
class, so.
It's cooler than the library.
But
Well,
wait, you'll be in
of
my
course.
next class or whenever that is. So. All right. So let me just get this. Alright.
So this is it already, huh? The end of the, this is it? The end of the semester, half semester for you guys?
Yes, and
That's
then
amazing.
my next
Second.
development 2 starts on Tuesday. Hello,
Hi
Fred.
there, I'm good, how are you?
Keep seeing you.
Is that a bad
There's this grid.
Okay.
Carly delivered her
Right.
exam back to me, or at least exactly of it. And I told her she's welcome to join the others somehow by phone to present, and hopefully she can with you. And I asked them to be the first team. Are you taking the thing apart or what? This team apparently has no PowerPoint. They'll just they'll present however they're going to do it. That's why I want them to go first, and then we'll have the team that has PowerPoint.
Okay.
Okay.
So I guess we can't break it.
And, I don't know if you want a blue screen or what behind.